Hello world of YouTube and welcome to another episode of Redacted, the show where every album has a story. When it comes to revisiting ideas, sometimes bands just kind of get what magic makes it work, and in the case of King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard throughout this decade, they've been revisiting some ideas that they had mastered already on releases past. The subject of today's video was initially going to be a different duology excursion that they did at the turn of the decade that I just couldn't get together in a fashion that I really enjoyed, so I shelved it in lieu of diving into a different revisiting that the band had done a couple years later. King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard and electronics aren't necessarily a pairing that always comes together often, but in the instance of Butterfly 3000 and the subject of today's video, they knocked it out of the park both times all around. But this album saw them doing an interesting pairing of ideas under the electronic umbrella that I thought I could try to bring together and keep both visions clear, if not a little more condensed. It is the 25th album from King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard that came out in 2023. I'm talking about the electronic rabbit hole that is the Silver Chord. Now, while seemingly done at random, this hodgepodge of genre revisits by King Gizzard have been entirely intentional, and the Silver Chord was announced at the same time as a different revisit with Pentratragonic, the thrash album that I thought was admittedly solid, but amongst both 2023 releases by King Gizzard, I absolutely loved the Silver Chord more. I thought that their breezy first half that made way for a dense, very more electronic-inspired second half took the jam band sounds that they've also been throwing into their wrenches here and there and made it work so well within the sort of adaptive, sort of extended ideas that already lie within the electronic scope. But I thought to myself after listening to both of these discs together, how can I bring them into one harmonious experience? Not necessarily keeping both full discs intact, but having the sort of vision behind this project still in full view while melding the very brief but infectious ideas with those extended mixes that coated the second disc. And that was more my goal for today. I kept the track listing in the same order. I just switched between the non-extended and extended mixes, with the exception of one glaring instance that makes sense in the context of what it represents for this record. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My version of the Silver Chord is 8 songs and 53 minutes long. So before we talk about why I chose which version over another, let's show off the track listing right now.
Theia, Theia.
Now, the blanket reason, to some degree, why I kept the shorter mixes over the extended mixes in this version has to do with me just not liking where they take some of those extensions. I do think that that is the bigger reason why the opener is the shorter version of Theia, though. I do not like the extended version of that at all. I think it's my least favorite one on the extended mixes. I think that it makes that main riff so fucking monotonous, and I don't think they adapt on it in any super interesting ways on the extended mix. So I kept the shorter one to open the record, because it's a nice little, like, also Nonagon style, like, cyclical intro to just hook the listener into this serene electronic experience. I will say, one of the things that I also wanted to do, though, with my Redacted was retain that endless flow that I think that the both short and extended mixes achieve masterfully. They very much replicate that feeling that Nonagon Infinity gave me the first time I spun it, as far as like getting lost in the sauce with the music. That being said, after Theia, I do have the only exemption to the doing one or the other rule with the title track, and it's mostly for the sequencing reason. I do like the short and long version of the title track a lot. I originally had the extended version here by itself, because I think that if I was gonna, like, introduce this extended mix, you know, ideology to some of these songs, the title track would be a good place to do it. Theia doesn't bleed well into the extended mix of the title track. However, it does bleed really well into the short version, and the short version of the title track actually transitions well into the extended mix. So I just use the extended mix as a moment where we show how deep the well can go by using the title track to make this experience that went from like almost 13 minutes to almost 16 minutes. And it feels like the real throwing into the proverbial deep end that I kind of wanted to capture anyway. So including both just works so well. And I wanted to keep that well even deeper in my original vision by having the extended version of Set after that. A song that I think does use its very simple but catchy lead hook riff to go the distance with it in a way that I think they were trying to do with Theia, but just flopping on that. So I have the extended version of Set following the extended version of the title track. Plus, I think that it just, again, transitions so fucking well to each other. But Set is a very simple but effective and catchy, just middle of the album, just fury uppercut into infectious dance grooves. Plus, it's also one of these shorter extended mixes, so it doesn't feel like you're going quite as deep as you just did on the last two songs. It almost feels like you're kind of climbing up out of the hole, so to speak. I also think that the way that the extended mix of Set sort of trails off into the sunset could have gone either way with changes, short versus extended mix, but kind of like Theia, I don't think it does as much with its ambiguity as it probably could have, considering what they did with Set's simplicity. But I like this one's extended mix more than Theia's. I think that it's, as far as being just a sort of lucid feeling, sort of just sprinkly electronic sort of deviation, I feel like it sort of creates this nice pocket for the record to sit in for a second before getting a little more twisted with Gilgamesh after that. A song that comes close to Theia for being an extended mix that I think is just obnoxious as fuck. I really don't like what they do with that lead sort of crescendo that they use as a hook. I think it's annoying. I think that it very much works better in a small song. Plus, it gives a sort of back and forth. You've got these two extended mixes going into these two leaner songs, while Gilgamesh ramps up the energy a little more than Change. It does so in service of taking that intensity and really warping it into this sort of kaleidoscope throughout Swan's song after that. Another song whose extended mix I use, but is also one of these smaller extended mixes in the proverbial echelon of the track listing. I think that as far as like adding more of an acid twist to their electronic influence, Swan song is a great moment of that. And I wanted to use it to also sort of like show the range of influences they were really culling into the Silver Chord. Out of respect, because I think they did some really cool stuff on here. But I think that Swan song is a good sort of penultimate grand extension before one more leaner song sends us into the horizons. Extinction is already one of the longer, smaller songs, and I think that on its own, it is a nice sort of like punctuation to what's been this electronic odyssey. I know I haven't done a whole bunch to talk about the lyrics of these songs, but unlike some of the more overt, environmentally driven stuff that they've really been going hard on through a lot of albums this decade, the Silver Chord keeps a lot of that in the backdrop in service of really going hard on the sonic concept. And honestly, I'm not wholly upset with that. You know, the album sort of uses grand imagery to ambiguously speak on those ideas outside of tracks like Extinction and Swan Song. That's also why I'm not really bringing it up until now. Because, I mean, even songs like Change and Set and Gilgamesh more talk about, like, grand deitistic entities. Sure, it sort of has that poetic nuance to sort of allude to talking about subjects like climate change and the like, but, like, they don't go that hard on it until the very end of the record, so I wasn't going to go too hard on talking about the depth of lyrics until near the end of this Redacted, because while I do like this album, and I love usually, like, where King Gizzard's songwriting takes when it comes to, like, presenting quirky ideas, I just don't think that's really this album's MO, while it's got some stuff, sort of in the mix. You could also argue that, like, some of the songs I chose, the smaller versions, sort of help accent those lyrics more. Anyway, that's my version of the Silver Chord. If you'd like to listen to it, it's linked in the description with a YouTube and a Spotify link. If you liked this episode of Redacted, give it a like. If you want to see more, consider subscribing. I drop 2 to 4 vids a week, depending on what I've got going on. Thank you so much for watching this, though. I've been Viral Rack. You guys have good days, lives, and situations, and I'll see you another day.
Woken by the smell of sordid power and defecting shortly after. Fist bump, dry land, black